Lamia in mythology. Before we delve into this topic of the Lamia, I feel it's important to mention the two shows that inspired this episode. The first being the recent Netflix release called Domino Day. A bit of a semi-spoiler, so here's your warning in advance. But one of the main characters' portrayal of a Lamia and the show's unique stance on this mythology largely intrigued me on the mythology of the Lamia and the powers they are typically associated with. The second show that inspired me was actually an anime that I believe you can find on Crunchyroll called Goodbye Dragon Life, where we see the more traditional depiction of the Lamia through the character of Selena. With both stories having such different depictions of what the Lamia is, it led me to wonder what mythology says about the existence of the Lamia and the powers they were once feared or worshipped for. The origins of the Lamia. While creatures similar to the Lamia appear throughout many cultures, the Lamia as we know it today is heavily linked to Greek mythology. While some in classical Greek mythology depict Lamias as demonic women who hunted and consumed children, their origins can be found in other tales. Another tale of the Lamia envisions them stemming from an extremely beautiful queen of Libya, who unfortunately caught the eye of Zeus. When Hera became aware of Zeus's infatuation with this queen, as she was somewhat known to do, she felt the need to punish this queen for Zeus's desires. In this specific story, Hera punished this queen of Libya by robbing her of any children that resulted in her union with Zeus, and cursed her with a form that Zeus would never desire, bestowing her with the lower body of a serpent. The queen was so distraught at the loss of her children and the new form that Hera had cursed her with, that she decided if she could no longer be blessed with the presence of her children, then no mother was worthy of this blessing, and in revenge for the abandonment she felt from Zeus, she would also use her looks to ensnare any man foolish enough to fall into her clutches. While there are more tales of their origins, the last that we will discuss in this video paints the first Lamia as a sea monster that was the daughter of Poseidon and mother of the monsters Scylla and Achelos. This origin story would explain why in ancient Greek the word for the Lamia translates into a word meaning large, dangerous loan shark. Because of this association as a sea monster, many also identified Lamia alongside the sea goddess Keto, as both were thought to be overwhelming forces that ruled over the seas, and in many other stories, it was also believed that it was Keto who birthed the sea monster Scylla and not the Lamia, leading some philosophers to believe that the Lamia and Keto are one in the same. The appearance of the Lamia. In terms of their physical appearance, Lamias were often depicted as human-like women from the waist upwards. Their beauty, which earned the envy of Hera, is thought to remain throughout their typically always female lineage, which assists them in lowering the guard of their prey. Their most notable trait on the upper half of their body is thought to be their eyes. The importance of the eyes stems from the original Lamia, the Queen of Libya, as one of the tales state that alongside the list of other methods Hera used to punish the Queen of Libya, she also cursed the queen with insomnia. Zeus, taking pity on the Queen of Libya, bestowed her with a means to avoid this curse that Hera placed on her by gifting her with the ability to remove her eyes and allow her the respite of sleep. Alongside this ability of removing her sight, the Queen of Libya also received the power of prophecy to perceive when any other being would do her harm. These gifts that Zeus bestowed upon the Queen of Libya were passed down to all of her Lamia daughters, thus giving them the trait of their curse-breaking, prophecy-perceiving eyes. However, their most defining feature is that of their lower body, which resembles the tail of a serpent, or what is often referred to as their coils. Lamias tend to have vibrant scales on their coils, many similar to actual snake patterns. Some Lamias also possess long ears, stilted reptilian pupils, a long snake-like tongue, and even patches of scales on certain parts of their upper body. Some Lamia are even believed to have two fangs in their mouths that can deliver a powerful venom, and have a rattle at the end of their tail, similar to a rattlesnake. The Lamia versus the Gorgon. Now that you've heard the description of the Lamia's appearance, if any of you are like myself, you may be thinking Lamia are a type of Gorgon in some way, related to the famous tale of Medusa. And if you thought this, like me, you too would also be wrong, as we both seem to underestimate the Greek goddess's willingness to curse women with the attributes of serpents. Similar to the Queen of Libya, a virgin priestess of one of Athena's temples was taken advantage of by the god Poseidon within one of Athena's temples. Seeing this as blasphemous, Athena chose to punish this priestess by turning her into a monstrous gorgon with snakes for hair and the power to turn those who gaze upon her into stone. As one can see, the similarities between the gorgon and the Lamia are overwhelming. Both taken advantage of by Greek gods and punished by Greek goddesses because of this, with the physical attributes of serpents, converting these once mortal women into monsters. Both Gorgon and Lamia also have a specific focus on their eyes and the power that lies within them. One could hypothesize that although their powers and the curses that resulted from them are directly from horrible tragedies committed towards them, their powers also bestowed them with a form of protection to prevent men from committing the same heinous acts against them once more. Within Greek mythology, there were no accounts of the two species ever interacting. However, due to their extreme similarities, I'd like to believe they'd share a common bond in their hatred for the Greek gods that condemned and harassed them. However, if the two were to be at odds, if we were to go off of the descriptions from Greek mythology, one would infer that the Lamia would come out successful. Now I know many of you must be looking at the screen as though what I've said is maddening. However, if you truly look at all of the evidence that we have provided, Lamia possess both the ability to gaze into the future, thus understand how Gorgons fight, and may even be blessed with the foresight to interpret when they will encounter the Gorgon. But even more useful, Lamia possess the ability within some tales to remove their eyes, thus stripping the Gorgon of their most useful asset. If the Lamia in question also possesses the renowned venom, the chance of the Gorgon surviving this encounter is slim to none. After all, there is a reason why the prowess of the Lamia was feared far and wide. Lamia and witches. In a callback to one of the inspirations for this episode, Netflix's 2025 release of Domino Day, many of you who watch this series may be questioning why they depicted one of the main witches as a Lamia. While this association of the Lamia with witches does not stem from their origins, it does have a space within their history. Between the mid-15th century and into the 16th century, Lamia shifted from being viewed solely as monsters and began to be more widely associated with beings like witches. Within this version of their mythology, as witches, these Lamia are often portrayed as powerful shapeshifters that possess two distinctive forms. The first form is that of a grotesque, feral, bloodthirsty being that is often depicted as being non-corporeal. Within this feral form, they largely appear as rotting women coated in the blood of their victims. Within their second state, they appear closer to that of a mortal woman who possesses an extreme beauty. In this form, their one defining non-human feature is a line of green and yellow scales running down the length of their spine. It was believed that these specific witches were capable of reproducing asexually. However, at times, hybrids between Lamia and mortal men were known to come into being. As witches, they were also believed to have an assortment of powers related to their craft besides their ability to shapeshift. They were considered to be minor sorceresses with the ability to cast small enchantments, such as gifting women with the ability of invisibility, placing a fog over a man's mind to disorient him, so that he does not detect any strange occurrences happening to him or around him, and they were also known to be powerful potion brewers, whose potions were capable of bestowing a litany of benefits. Some of their lesser known powers are their ability to consume the blood or life energy of their prey. Within the Lamia lore, this attribute to their being goes largely unspoken. However, it is this ability to suck the vitality of their prey that often attributes to their good looks and long-lasting youth. Lamia in the present media. Now I'd like to roll it back all the way back to the two shows that inspired this video, being Domino Day and Goodbye Dragon Life. While Lamia have appeared throughout many shows and a lot, and I mean a lot, of anime, I chose these two TV shows as they are the most recent depictions of the Lamia that I can recall seeing at this point in time. Interestingly enough, within both TV shows, the Lamia's representation as a powerful, ferocious monster remains, as they are depicted as something to be greatly feared. Starting with Goodbye Dragon Life, this anime appears to largely draw on the original Greek mythology in the depiction of the Lamia through the character of Selena. Like the Libyan queen, Selena possesses the lower half of a serpent and also a large focus on her Lamia eyes. In the anime, Selena's ability regarding her eyes is called Evil Eye and has the ability to hold her foes in place as though they have been turned to stone. As one can assume, this ability of Evil Eye stems from the convergence of both the lore of the Lamia and the Gorgon. Interestingly enough, while Selena for the most part largely reflects a depiction of the original version of the Lamia, she also possesses the ability to utilize magic, akin to the more modern depictions of the Lamia. Within Goodbye Dragon Life, when utilizing magic, Selena for the most part is depicted using earth magic, such as forming pillars or spears from the ground. While this differs from the depiction of Lamia witches that we know through our mythology, it still shows a clear nod to the belief of Lamias being akin to witches. As previously mentioned, Netflix's Domino Day leans far more into this new age depiction of the Lamia as witches. Similar to this more modern depiction of the Lamia, Domino was practically indistinguishable from any other human and most witches within the show. Her most outstanding characteristics as a Lamia being her succubus-like need to feed off of the essence of men and her apparent far stronger magical abilities. It is also notable that without feeding on the essence of others, typically men, it seemed our Lamia Domino grew weak, and it was heavily implied that if she remained in this state for far too long, she would in essence die. One could interpret this state as a nod to the depiction of the feral Lamia who needed to feed on the blood of others for their substance. Similar to Domino, they too were vampiric-like creatures that required the life force of others to survive. From what I could interpret from watching Domino Day, a side note which I highly recommend anyone who has a Netflix account to do, as it is quite a good series. But the main difference from the depiction of the Lamia as witches versus what we know from mythology is the extreme level of power that Lamia witches are portrayed as possessing within the show. As within mythology, they are described as akin to any other witch, at best, and at worst, they are seen as minor practitioners unable to cast any major spells, as they rely so often on their Lamia inherent abilities. However, in Domino Day, interestingly enough, that is not the case. Domino is seen as somewhat powerful, capable of accomplishing feats that practitioners far more knowledgeable within the craft could only dream of accomplishing. While this slight difference in their powers is different to the modern lore of the witching Lamia, I find it fitting perfectly, as overall, in both their present and ancient mythologies, Lamia inherently are portrayed as monstrous and powerful. They are something to be respected or something to be feared. And with Domino's lack of restraint in terms of her powers, I feel the show paints her as fitting within this description of the Lamia perfectly. If you enjoyed this video essay on Lamias, please support the channel by clicking the like button, subscribing, or sharing the video. Help our channel reach the eyes of many. After all, unlike the Gorgon and the Lamia, you humans may gaze upon us for as long as you so please.